So welcome to those who have joined us now, only now. This is our first webinar in 2026. So we call it a new series, but in fact it's a follow-up of the webinar we had in December, mostly with a debate on the topic. 43 participants, I think is not bad. I don't see anyone in the waiting room. Of course, we will continue to admit participants, I think, if you agree, but then I think we could maybe start. And yes, our topic is about the new architecture of the EU policies and funds post 2027 and what is the place for local development, and the debate on how the next MFF can evolve in 2026, because we had a few presentations at the end of last year, especially by Serafin from Edel, who works all the time on this topic, and already some insights. But at the end of our webinar, we didn't have enough time to discuss. In the meantime, things are continuing to evolve, of course, and Serafin will bring us on the, let's say, state of the art. And I will just then now pass over to our chair or president of LDnet, Peter Ramsden. But I wanted to tell you that this meeting is being recorded. I hope everyone agrees. Yeah, so that we have the possibility to make a summary and maybe also post some highlights on YouTube's like we usually do, or even the whole meeting. We will see. Okay, Peter, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Pedro, and welcome everybody to the first of our webinars of 2026, but in fact the fourth in this series looking at the future of how the future of architecture of EU policies and funds post 2027. So we've had already three last year with quite lively presentations and discussions, and we look forward to continuing that through this year as things become more and more concrete, as things evolve. Just one request to people, please do use the chat. You can use it to ask questions, which we'll come back to during the question and answer session. And do consider joining LDnet. Membership is free, which is possibly the best deal on the internet. And it enables us to keep in touch with you more easily, and also we'll consult on various things and so on. But do consider joining. You just have to go on the website, and it's a few clicks and a few questions. Thanks very much. I'm now going to pass on to Ursula, who's going to introduce the topic properly, and Serafin, they're going to do a sort of joint presentation. Thanks very much, everybody. Over to you, Ursula.
Many thanks, Peter. And if Mesli, if you can stop sharing your screen, I will share mine then. And thanks everybody for joining us for this never-ending story of the future. It seems we were starting this session, this first discussion in February, and we didn't realize it would take so long, that it would be a series of 4 events, and that we would sorry, I just need to make sure that you can all see my screen. I would just very briefly remind you, we said with Serafin we would not be speaking too much today because we want to give you the opportunity. So I will be very brief, just reminding people, going over what has happened until now. So we had the first of the series in February, and this was before anything was actually published, before anything was known. So we were just exploring the potential changes, what might happen with the new MFF, multi-annual financial framework. And we were at this time just asking ourselves the question, what will happen? What will be the future of the territorial instruments? When we had the next webinar in May, there was still not the official publication, but there were already some leaks, some informal information about what the new proposals involve. So our meeting in May was very much an overview of the position of key stakeholders that are representing the local communities. So we had ELAD, for example, the European Leader Association for Rural Development. We had the Rural Pact Coordination Group. We also discussed what the Parliament and other stakeholders were saying. So this is what we tried to anticipate what will happen. Then in July, the Commission has actually published the proposals, and then we already knew what was happening. That already immediately raised a lot of reactions and, let's say, criticism, opposition as well. And then in December, we had this last webinar with more input, with presentations, especially including the co-legislators, member states. So the co-legislators are the European Parliament and member states. So we had a representative from the Polish government, and we also had some more update about what other stakeholders are saying, just to see how the proposals might evolve. But unfortunately, having had so much to show and discuss, we didn't really have the time to let the audience come in. So this is where we would want to continue this dialogue with you. Now I hand over very briefly to Serafin to remind us what actually the new proposals have included.
Thank you, Ursula. Thank you, LDnet, for having me again. I will be brief because the point of today's discussion. The current budget, for those of you, the likely event that some of you don't know this, I'm sure you all do, is this drastic reorganization of the budget and essentially a consolidation of budget lines. Essentially, two big pillars have been created out of 52 different programs. The European Competitiveness Fund, which I like to call it as like a slush fund from the Commission. So it's like a quick, big amount of money that the Commission can activate on big strategic issues, and also when there is like an emergency. As at the moment in the current budget, prior to COVID, the Commission only have, like the Commission President, as he said, only have 4% of the budget you could actually play with to address COVID response. So this is one of the reasons why this consolidated budget of 23% European Competitive Fund has been put together. And then, and I finish with that, what interests us the most, which is the National Regional Partnership Plan, which consolidates the CAP strategic plans, the cohesion policy, and also other few other programs. In rather than having 300 or 500 operational programs, the Commission only wants to receive one per member state, and will force the different players and the different institutions, different departments within a government, different central and regional authorities, and the stakeholders to work together in a way that is always proclaimed, but in practice doesn't have. So it's a big experiment here, and as you know, and Ursula will mention, it has had like no little consequence. So over to you, Ursula.
Okay, thanks a lot. So this is a summary again from my substantial presentation in December, which lists the key concerns that we have heard in different fields of work where we operate, where we meet stakeholders. But this is what we heard that stakeholders were worried about. First of all, as Serafin mentioned, that there's only one national plan, even though it is called national and regional. And there is a risk of losing this regional and local dimension, losing what has already been established as lines of communication between regional and local levels, for example, losing the capacity that was built at the local level, not to mention, of course, this whole issue of subsidiarity and making not allowing the lower levels to take decisions which they have been taking until now. And there is the second concern is that the draft regulations actually propose very little, show very little detail about how the funding should be allocated and how it should be spent. And the risk is that the member states that are already paying enough attention to the local, let's say, dimension and let's say, empowering the local communities well enough, they will continue to do that. And then the ones that haven't been doing that, except when the Commission was actually requiring certain minimum allocations and so on, they will continue not doing that, and that will increase inequalities across the different EU territories. And then there was a concern, of course, very big from the rural communities, that certain types of territories need special treatment, and the fact that they are not explicitly mentioned was considered a risk. And there was an issue that either the farmers, for example, for rural areas, the farmers or the urban interests would be much stronger to pull the money to them, and not to leave enough funding for rural, wider rural development, which I would imagine Serafin will comment on. There has been a big debate about that between the Commission and the Parliament, but nothing has been settled yet. And finally, there were a lot of concerns expressed about the area-based tools, such as especially Leader CLLD, but also smart villages, that were considered, the Commission calls them recognized success. They are success stories, but they have not been given their rightful place, many stakeholders think. In the new legislation, they have not been safeguarded. Their continuation is a bit uncertain. They are theoretically, a Leader CLLD is mandatory, but without a minimum threshold and so on. So these were the concerns that stakeholders expressed. And now, Serafin, over to you with some already proposals that have been voiced, how these issues could be addressed.
Thank you, Ursula. Very briefly, I'm going to give 3 pieces of information and 3 pieces of provocation, or the other way around, as to get with the debate. So I'm going to be very briefly. As you know, eventually things have moved since December again, and we have a new letter from the Commission President providing further details about their MFF, and in a way amending her original proposal with a new set of changes. In that letter in January, she says that the 10% for rural gives a lot of detail. But actually, if you look at the proposal she's making, or she's suggesting a 10% for rural, it looks suspiciously similar to what European Agricultural Fund for Rural Development does at the moment. So I know many people in the same think, well, maybe this 10% for rural is for things beyond agriculture. If you look at the letter that's sent by Mrs. von der Leyen, I think there's less chance that this is the case right now. She also gives a particular figure, 77 billion, as opposed to the original calculation that we have it around 80 billion euros. But the letter in particular is very vague because it talks about 10%, but doesn't say what it's for. It is true that it's mentioned elsewhere that's about the right to stay, eligible diversification of rural areas, economic empowerment, and so on. But it doesn't even say what are the rural areas. And if you look at the regulations, there's not a mention anywhere of that, despite of the fact that there is a defined definition at European level of what is urban and rural. So much that is actually adopted by the United Nations. So it's not perfect, but at least it's something. The problem with that level of vagueness is that essentially will mean that 10% per rural could mean absolutely anything, which normally tend to be a continuation of existing schemes if path dependency is followed. So the Parliament is voting, has been tabling amendments already for the MFF proposal. The Committee of the Regions has done that as well, and there's going to be further votes and amendments in the coming weeks. I'm showing here, as of example, one of the amendments that have been tabled, perhaps one of the most ambitious, which is to call for the 10% to be of the rural to be essentially used for things outside agriculture. In any case, that is our text from the Commission's letter, so it's not a copied in any way, but also defining what is a rural area, because 10% has to be for areas that are designated as rural. Otherwise, you allow the member states to invest in a village or in a city, in a bigger province or national area which is considered rural, and that counts against rural. So that's important that whatever this wording of another, that should be precise what this 10% is for in terms of goals, but also in terms of spatial targeting. Otherwise, it's void. They're essentially void as it is. Next slide, please. Ursula, next slide. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I could move it myself. My apologies. The other provocation is that 10% for rural, that was a surprise that when it came before the end of the year. But in reality, as mentioned earlier, it's not going to be very practical for the most of things that many people like yourself like to do. Therefore, a case should still be made, and it's been made to actually have a dedicated earmark for local development, urban and rural. That earmark could be cumulative to this other 10% for rural. So it's not like a 10% and another 10%, but actually there are funds that can be used, can be counted against this 10% for rural and this 10% for local development. In any case, this should be defined in terms of what it is a rural area, and what it is a urban area, and this broader, as said in the past, this broader 10% more or less amounts to the amount of money that the EU is investing in local development, urban and rural in the past, and will allow higher flexibility than 5% for leader or 10% ERDF for sustainable urban development, which is something member states finance ministers don't want to do on account that the EU is too diverse and this uniforms EU-wide. So specific definitions is something that they are not gonna, now that the Commission has not put them in the proposal, they will not like to go back to. So another proposal to do that is articulating in a wording like this, which I believe has been tabled in the Parliament for the vote on the MFF. Last fact and provocation. Regional check. This is a very political thing, but it has very meaningful. People think that this regional check that the Commission is offering to ensure that central governments don't take politically motivated decisions doesn't only concern federal countries or regionalist countries like Spain or Germany, Austria, concerns any country. The way that the regional check is set out in the Commission's latest proposals is too unenforceable to be more than a checklist. This is a big issue. It has constitutional implications, and ran the Commission accidentally get into the meeting a constitutional fight between central and regional government, but also potentially EU, a given region, bringing the Commission to court if it feels the regional check is actually used as a device to centralize powers or to give the powers to the member state. It is true, as some of you from Germany know and other federal countries, that this is a fight that should be fought 5 years ago when there was not a legal challenge in the, for instance, the German Constitutional Court or the Spanish one about the formal centralization of CAP. But now many regions are so aware that this is now or never that I expect legal challenge. So a way for the Commission to have a constructive, fact-based and legally binding regional check is to actually properly articulate in legal terms. One element that can be done is as expressed here. Anyway, this is just information and provocation as to kick off the debate. Thank you very much.
I think this is now for Pedro to introduce the questions.
Ursula, I was waiting for you to hand
I said I would not.
over
I would
to me.
directly. Yes, I would.
Are we going to discuss the one question after the other, or are we?
Oh, you want all of them? Maybe all of them one after
maybe
another.
all of them at once, so that we can choose a little bit. And these are the questions actually which we propose, let's say, for the discussion. First one is still something not related to the, let's say, proposals from Seraphine. They are on the opportunities and challenges for local development, for local communities in the current MFF proposals from July. And we would like also for you to think about really also opportunities, not only challenges. And because we know we have pointed out all the difficulties and let's say maybe the loss of of leader, mainly in some member state, or the fear, let's say, but also what could be the, let's say, constructive opportunities to, let's say, to bring things ahead on a positive note. Then what are the key points around the key points that we have, which the policy debate should now focus in 2026, because now it's the hot time, let's say, where the institutions will decide, let's say, and I think all practitioners should also raise their voice. And what are the specific changes that we, let's say, as a community of practitioners, should advocate from our, let's say, local perspective? And last but not least, also, who can be our potential allies in this debate? This also depends a lot, of course, on the member state you're from, the region you're from. So these are the things, your, let's say, statements or, yes, discussion points should be about. And maybe there's already someone you can use the usual tools, raise your hand. And there's also someone in the chat, I think. There's Lydia. Let's maybe take the question from Lydia, and I would ask Lydia to, let's say, read out again her question, and maybe yes, so that we can see her. Lydia, is that possible? Yes. Hello, Lydia.
Okay, sorry, I'm at the airport in the lounge, so
No problem. We can hear you well.
okay. So I'm from here as a EEC, European Economic and Social Committee member, and the member of Rural Pact Coordination Group as well, and we produce several opinions on different aspects of this new fund, the new architecture, and so on. And we are not happy, and nobody is actually happy as it seems. So do you know what is the reason for this new? I put infrastructure. Actually, I wanted to put architectural framework. It's kind of mystery because nobody agrees with that, and we all have fear that was presented by you already. So, and also I added the fear of capacity to produce in proper and partnership and participatory way the plans, and also capacity of administration to implement such infrastructure in many and architecture in many countries. Even multi-fund for leader was not be able to produce by two ministries. So
yes, thank you, Lydia. I think it's a very valid question, let's say. Of course, I think we know why we have these proposals, and I would maybe pass over to Serafin, who's really working on that, and just explain very briefly why, let's say, the Commission has chosen this path, and what are the expectations? Because I think Lydia has a point regarding the capacity of some member state governments and administration to change to this new system, seeing that there have been many problems with the other system. Is it more a challenge or an opportunity? Sorry to...
Let me start with the last one. Many countries will love, many finance ministries love this structure. Those countries who had the cohesion fund in the past, those below 90%, like Spain, really miss not having that big national fund for big projects and so on. That this new architecture allows for that. It is true that then administrations have their own internal arrangement of transactional costs, but centrally in many countries, including countries with the federal structure, would love to have like this big tool that give them much more leeway in order to plan and to move around. So it's a great opportunity from the point of view of the central government to achieve a scale. The other reason, the first question is, I think there are politics at play. There is the geopolitics at play. They need to have more flexibility within projects, within programs. We need for the Commission to have more strategic autonomy to change priorities, and that's why this 20% of budget is this other big fund, the European Competitiveness Fund. So that's the reason of that. And then there is a criticism that those of you who work in cohesion policy and rural development for many years know that there's many people in certain sectors, I've been saying that for 20 or so years, that said the current governance of rural development, agriculture is slow, it's too consensual. We need more decisiveness. We need to reduce silos and the proliferation of instruments. And it came a moment that all these came together in these proposals. But I don't think it's just a personal initiative of Mrs. von der Leyen, I sometimes caricaturize. It's a result of wider pressures and demands from member states geopolitically, but also in terms of capacity needs from the Commission and member states to manage the budget. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Serafin. And maybe I can add that it's at least my impression, and when I talk to officials of the European Commission, that this has been very much steered by, let's say, the president and her team herself and the DG budget. It's not that DG Agri or DG Regio, let's say, have been asked and that they would like to have things like they are proposed now. But that's the way how, let's say, new policy directions are made. Also, I think it's very clear. I think, Serafin, you had mentioned it. There are these new challenges that we have, global challenges and topics we have to work on. And you see the introduction of the new fund. And of course, if we look from a local perspective, we think that things never change. We want to continue to do LEADER. We want local development strategies, and that's, I think, a little bit the problem. Does anyone want to react to that, or does someone have a new discussion point or a question? Ursula.
Okay, since I don't see too many people yet
bring Ivan Tosic, but let's start.
I will just very quickly remind also people that in the second webinar we had this keynote listener who actually also shared with us his view, partly why these changes have been introduced, from the perspective of a focus on competitiveness. He said, well, it's very well known that European productivity, labor productivity, and so on is not as good as high as, for example, in the US. And therefore, there is this drive for competitiveness rather than cohesion, which he says that there doesn't have to be a trade-off between competitiveness and cohesion, but there is a general popular, let's say, simplified understanding that you either support cohesion or support competitiveness. And it seems that the current, let's say, direction of the people who are steering this change is going more in the direction of competitiveness than in the direction of cohesion. But not keeping in mind that what Joaquin said, our keynote listener, that this is mainly a matter of finding the right arguments and being able to speak with the right language to convince people like ministers of finance and people who are and economists who are looking at this competitiveness. It's not a real trade-off, but it's a matter of discourse which we need to keep in mind.
Yes, thank you, Ursula. And of course, we are not happy with this from a local development perspective. And I think we should focus a little bit on our discussion, how we can still save our, let's say, our perspective and our needs. And I would pass over to Ivan Tosic, I think from Budapest. Hello.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Ivan Tosic from Budapest. We are just finishing a project, ESPON project, which was called URDICO, the Urban Dimensions of Cohesion Policy, where eight cities were included. And we just had the last conference in Rome 1 week ago. Now, this project proved that in 8 cities, in the last 2 programming period, and sorry, I am talking about cities. I am a kind of urban person, but if I talk about cities, I talk about the local level. So don't be offended, please. So in the last 2 programming periods since 2014, a fantastic architecture of cohesion policy has been developed, which really included the local level in most countries into cohesion policy. I don't have to mention the sustainable urban development, compulsory earmarking, ITI and CLLD, etc., etc. And as a result of that, in most cities, really capacities developed, and also functional urban area thinking developed, which really helped to have a real local dimension of cohesion policy. Now, most countries are now very much afraid that this new multi-annual financial framework, which is clearly designed on the basis of the recovery fund, this will lead to the same problems that the recovery fund has proven to achieve, and this is in some countries the complete exclusion of the local level or subnational level for programming. Hungary might be one of the most clear examples, but not only Hungary, but most countries, they were complaining that when the recovery fund was established, then the national governments really thought that this is their money and they allocate it. We have a few examples, which are few exceptions, like Italy, for example, which is a quite good example how you could have used the recovery fund in a better way. So there is a fear on the local government level that all the achievements what we achieved in the last two programming periods in cohesion policy will get lost, at least in some countries, not everywhere, because if a country makes a decision to continue present policies, they can do it, but countries are not enforced to do so. And for this reason, I think the compulsory territorial earmarking, a compulsory urban and local chapter, and the involvement of subnational actors in the development of the national and regional plans, this would be the minimum requirements which we should achieve, I think. And this is a joint interest from urban and rural areas. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ivan. But I think it was good to already point to this specific, let's say, specific challenge for the urban areas, and the way, of course, Hungary also used cohesion policy. We will still come to LDnet, I think, with some other comments that we will have. But is there someone who wants specifically to say something still related to this? No. Okay. Then I would give the floor to Franco Mantino from Italy.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to suggest a reflection on 2 points. One is that we are talking about the MFF, but we are neglecting the fact that in the same time also draft regulations have been published and proposed, and so my suggestion is to read together this MF proposal with the draft regulation. And looking at the draft regulation, I think the perspectives are worse than simply speaking about the MFF, because there is no real novelty, in my view, in the framework of the new proposal of regulation. And the second point is about the 10%. I think that I share the concern of Serafin about this proposal because it risks to be obviously limited to the traditional structural policies in agriculture. The real problem is who is going to take care of important interventions in services and infrastructures for rural areas. Because I don't think that the Rural Development Fund can be responsible for this. And if we see the distribution of and the allocation of funds of the regional fund and the social fund between rural areas and urban areas, we realized that most of these funds are concentrated in big cities, capital cities, cities above 50,000 of inhabitants. I made some calculation for the Italian case. So the risk is that nobody take care of important categories of intervention in rural areas, especially for services and infrastructure. So my suggestion is that this threshold of 10% should be revised in order to take into account also these kind of needs of rural areas. I don't know if this could be included in the 10%, but probably there should be in some part of the proposal that who is responsible for this kind of important objectives in rural areas. The third point is that I think considering the proposal of regulation, there is an incredibly difficulty in understanding the perspective of the governance of the national strategic plan. If we look at the past experience of resilience and recovery plan, there is a centralization in the national governments, and I think that Italy is not a good example of this because most of policies, most of instruments have been managed by national administration, national ministries, and regional authorities, and have never seen funds and I never managed funds in this kind of policy framework. So I'm very concerned about this perspective, and I think that the Committee of Region is on the same page on this point. So I think this is an open question that should be considered in the analysis of the perspective of multi-annual financial framework.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Franco. I think your point on the let's say governance, and that we don't know how in the different member states let's say the governance will be organized is, let's say, a very a hot topic really, which has to be discussed quite soon. But we will all have to do it, let's say, from our own perspective. I would like to get back to Serafin, but then especially more on the 10% again, because I think the 10% for me is, well, it's not clear. You were writing in your slide 95% of the EFRD is for farms, which is not true. It depends a lot on the member states. There are member states like Germany who use just a little bit of the EFRD for farms, and there are countries like Portugal who use like mainly everything for farms. And it's not 95% because there are many, it's the 5% for leader, I think, but it's more, there are quite a few member states who use more than 5% of the FRD for leader. So the figure is not clear. And with this, let's say we have to advocate a bit more with the success that we have with local development in the EFRD. Serafin, I didn't want to provoke, let's say, too much, and I don't disagree with you completely because I think you just want to provoke us a little bit.
Fact and provocation.
Yes.
8%, the exact figure is 8% of CAP spent in rural development beyond agriculture. That's calculations from the Commission. It's being stated. We haven't seen the calculations, but that's the calculation they claim to have. In any case, the point was essentially that with the proposal of the Commission 10% for rural as it stands, what you lay open is path dependency. Essentially, in December we talk about 10%. Oh, maybe it's even an opportunity for local development. No. The 10% is essentially allowing member states or reassuring member states to continue doing with the same activities they were doing with FRD. In some cases, more diversification in agriculture. In most cases, the opposite. So the point is that quite clearly, with the proposal as it stands, in a bureaucracy, what you have is path dependency. So if the Ministry of the Czech Republic use EFRD in a certain way, this 10% will be used to try to replicate as much as possible the FRD activities that they have, because that's the easiest way to do that with less money. So there will be more pressure to do anything else other than agriculture support because the Commission quote of 64 billion is less than EFRD, as you know. The other thing, just for launching provocation on provocation, is that because the regulations are so small now, and Franco, co-author of a study, has been released yesterday on basic services on rural areas, published by the Parliament, which we are very happy. The regulations are so he's completely right. We need to look, or people should be looking, we are looking, of course, to the actual text of the regulation, not just the MFF communication, which is the Parliament is going to vote on that soon. That's why the amendments I mentioned earlier, but also amending the regulations. As it happens, the regulation is so much shorter than the current ones that allows so much flexibility that is even too much for member states. Because before settling cohesion policy, if you are a certain country with a certain region, with a certain level of prosperity, you can invest in railways, but not if you are a richer region, you cannot do that. At the moment, if you look at the regulations you can use EFRD for almost anything. You can use cohesion policy for almost anything because the eligibility rules have completely disappeared. They have not completely disappeared as such. They have completely disappeared from the regulation, and they will probably be reintroduced by secondary legislation, which will basically limit the democratic scrutiny in the European Parliament. So what I mean is that the regulations are so, as Peter Berkowitz said in a number of meetings from the Regio, an empty canvas. Sometimes so empty canvas that I actually got like you can actually find a way of suddenly start investing in West Germany, rural areas, in the same kind of activities that only were allowed for Romanian rural areas. That's definitely a big win or a potential win for those areas, less developed areas that might still be in Western Germany. But that's definitely not the idea of the Commission. But the problem is that with simplifying so much, you are exposing that the funds are a bit misused. So therefore, a bit more specificity in the regulations is necessary, even for the interest of the good management of EU funds.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Serafin. Ursula?
Yeah, I would just, first of all, I think I would like to encourage more people from the audience. I know there are a lot of people who are knowledgeable and have and represent strong groups of stakeholders to come in the discussion. But before, so nobody is coming yet. So I would just want to bring an additional aspect. We are always primarily focusing on the amount of funding. So we're thinking about, the total budget, the percentage that will be in the competitiveness fund, the percentage that will go potentially to rural development, the percentage that might go to territorial tools. That is very important, and we need to safeguard that. But I would also like to say that it's very often not how much money is available, but also how it is spent and who decides about how it is spent. That is extremely important. And there, one of the issues with the centralization, the national plans, is that, okay, maybe the regions will be implementing part of the funding eventually if they stand up and fight for it in certain member states. But the eligibility rules and the decisions and all the management of the performance framework and so on, all that will be centralized with the national government. So basically, the national government will have all the power to decide how the money is spent and who are the eligible beneficiaries and who decides who gets the funding. So what are the governance mechanisms? So I think, what can we do to safeguard that this risk of centralization, these, let's say, secondary rules, not just the amount of funding, that this risk does not materialize. And it's a question to everybody, like to all of us. Let us all think what we can do to safeguard that.
There's Lydia. She's still in the lounge of the airport. Lydia, can you still connect?
Yes, sorry, I'm still really at the lounge, but I have to come, otherwise I would not catch my flight. And I completely agree with Ula, because there is a big fear of centralization, and it's not just with this MFF. At least in Croatia, many services are centralized, and we see that, for example, in social welfare or in health institution and public health, and we don't see that as a good move. Neither we see the better performance. So it is really fear of decentralization, and that the region and local communities with who are not so strong and influential, that they will be losers. And maybe you didn't think to talk about LEADER here, but actually LEADER and CLLD are the only bottom-up really processes and opportunities for local communities to decide for what they would like to have projects and spend money. Without certain percentage, that would be also compromised, because if it's not ring-fenced, I spoke with some people from our ministry, and they unofficially, of course, yeah, it will be probably 1%. So, I mean, if we have less money for such approaches and tools like LEADER and CLLD, although LEADER is obligatory, we lose this subsidiarity principle, and we lose the possibilities for communities to have a say in their development. Over the time, if it's the case, they will lose the capacity that was built over of the last years to really think strategically what they need. So it's say lose-lose situation if it stays like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. But what is your, let's say, your constructive proposal? Because it looks like it's a dilemma, and it will just be worse, and nothing will happen. And it goes in the direction, when we look at Croatia, of what Bojana is writing in the chat, and regarding, let's say, purely, let's say, CLLD. How could you improve the situation for your country, starting already now?
Yeah, I think first, I think we have two levels. One level is an EU. I think, as I said before, there was no rural envelope at all in the first proposal, and I think there was a lot of organizations, including both consultative bodies of EU, CORE and ESC, but also Rural Park Coordination Group and many other networks. And I think that pressure brought at least to this 10%. So that's one way how we can fight also for leader. In our opinions, we mentioned this fear of losing this bottom-up approach. And second is, yes, on national level, which should be the task of the networks and some organizations to press or to start to talk at least with the with the ministries. And in this moment, we don't know which ministries. Because who will be in charge in each country? Government. I mean, government is ministry. So it's a lot of things that we don't know how to approach. But okay, for leader, we can approach Ministry of Agriculture. But still, yeah, there is a lot of fear that it will be centralized and that this bottom-up approach will be lost, but we shall do something as much as we can.
Yes, we will continue the discussion, and we will ask you, let's say, in a year's time, what is the situation? I think in none of the member states it is already clear who will lead the whole process and how it will work out. So because Serafin, he tries to anticipate already how this will be, and in many cases probably it will be like that, but you know, they cannot do there's a wording, they cannot do the plan, the implementation, let's say, without the final recipients, let's say, they have to be implicated.
Yes, just one sentence, and yes, we have to put on agenda on national level to talk about it, because most of the cities, I recently moderate one panel with mayors of the cities, and they were completely not aware of this new architecture, and that there will be a lot of changes, and they are including in territorial investment funds. So, you know, we have to put it on agenda on the national level, this discussion. That's something that we can do as a civil society.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Lydia, for this. Does someone want to react immediately, let's say, on this path of the discussion? Franco again. Yes, Franco.
Sorry, but the question was very clear, and according to my experience, I working in different programming periods, and I remember that in the period 2007, 2014, there was a good architecture, because there was a partnership agreement among all the funds, and the partnership agreement plan was a strategic document, as should be a national document. And then there were also, in application of the strategic plan, there were regional operational programs. This is a good, in my view, is a good model, whereas I don't see, for example, that the new national plan could be an operational plan, because if you think that the CAP strategic plan was a monster of 5 or 4 or 5,000 pages, you can imagine what kind of document should be a national plan that include also the regional fund and the social fund. So I don't think this could be the CAP strategic plan could be a model, because it's not a strategic plan, it's an operational plan. So and we have lost the strategy in the CAP strategic plan. If you try to understand which is the strategy, you became mad. So my answer is, let's get in the past and underline the fact that the new national plan should be a strategic plan, could not be an operational plan, and then leave member states to organize themselves as they want with regional programs, but they are responsible for approving the regional program. This could be a model that could be a real simplification for the future, not just the rhetoric that the Commission is going to say continuously.
And how do you ensure that they will support local development, Franco, in those internal programs which the Commission will not, let's say, look at anymore?
But this is not a problem, because it's important to state that in the strategic plan, one point of the strategy is the territorial strategies that could have enough financial resources and coherent instruments. So you can put at this level in the strategic plan the threshold for the territorial intervention.
Okay, well, let's see. There is a question in the chat. First there was a comment from Joanna from Estonia. I'm sure that we all agree that that it would be good from a local perspective, of course, not to have a focus on productivity, but I think probably this is the way things are now planned, and there's nothing we can do. So we have to adapt and look for our, let's say, niche. This is policy, and but if someone wants to say something regarding this, please feel free to comment on that. Otherwise, there's a very concrete question from Martijn de Bruin on let's say how the negotiations will take place, and if there is a territorial chapter discussion, I think like we usually had. Serafin, maybe you know something about
Yes,
that.
happy to do so. Well, as you know, after 6 months delay, which is a lot of delay last time round, a lot of the positions were firm up 6 months after the Commission table its proposals. Now we are much delayed than that. But following the first letter of the Commission, the Parliament rapporteurs Muresan and Tavares have presented a proposal of the budget. It means that the whole machine started in December. In Parliament, there's a nego box on the Council already. There's a second nego box being prepared by the Cyprus presidency. Which means that the rapporteurs and shadow rapporteurs are being appointed as we speak. There was a big debate with the 3 commissioners and all the key players in the parliament last Monday in Strasbourg, which is annoying as it was not in Brussels. All of this means that by June, we can have both institutions essentially firming up their positions. There will be a year of proposals. So the time for any influence that people might have is the next 2 months at most, before legislative, Parliament has to start debatable amendments, and Council will finalize their general approach. It might take longer, but I think it's not unrealistic to think about June, when both institutions will already start pretty much consolidating their views, and then there will be just up to them to negotiate. The territorial chapter. I think that is something that's being talked about, but I don't see really that happening. I don't expect the Reformation proposal to significantly change, and definitely not a new architecture within that. What might happen is what we have seen is 10% for rural, maybe some earmark, territorial earmark, some additional conditions that might happen. One thing that people is not paying attention sufficiently is the performance framework, which is going to be, in my view, more important than the regulations themselves, because they're going to say how much money is going to be spent and measured, and that's something that is very vague, and that in order to achieve local development and inclusiveness and so on, that should be improved. So the calendar for any representation demonstration, for instance, I saw LART, which congratulations to them. They presented a package of amendments to secure leader in the CAP regulation. That's very good. I cannot comment if they're good or bad, but definitely they are comprehensive, and I welcome others who, if they have the chance, to make representations to domestic negotiators, but also, of course, the MEPs, called members. ECOSOC has been very fast this time, but I know they're going to be continue working on that in the coming months. Sorry to the long, but that's the calendar. Then there will be, I expect as well, or we expect as well, that the so-called informal dialogue will start with the commission, between the commission and the member states as soon as this is clarified a bit. And that will normally take a year and a half as well to start to finalize the new programs. Even if I know in Poland and Czech Republic, they're pretty fast. They're already starting rather fast, already drafting their national regional partnership plan, if I'm not mistaken. Now, which country I'm talking about, I think it's Czech Republic and Poland, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Serafin. So things are going at a, let's say, different pace in the member states, but maybe we should really look at those countries who already have some more concrete ideas on how they want to do things. And we have Alexandra, who actually works in the Polish Ministry of Funds, and who we had as a speaker last time. We cannot see you, Alexandra, but we remember you from last time. Doesn't matter if your camera doesn't work. Please give the
camera. My camera is on, and
for some reason we don't see you.
Some technical reasons, but I'm here. It's and I can see myself, and that's quite strange. Okay, but never mind. Well, yes, we are. I don't know whether we are more advanced than the others, but yes, we also think that the crucial would be the setup of the national and regional plan, and we are planning on 16 regional as a country. And at this moment of the planning, we are thinking of having 16 regional chapters, except for, of course, other chapters which would be sectoral. One of which would be probably rural. But we are so the official launch of of starting drafting the plan, it's going to happen next week on the 29th of January. And we are starting also the dialogue with our local action groups even day before, which is meaning on Wednesday we are planning on general meeting explaining the regulation and the concept of having one plan, and also we are trying to collect we'll be trying to collect opinions and ideas on how what we could do to make the best out of the Commission's proposal. I think that's how we also perceive our role as a coordinating institution, because in Poland we have an institution which is going to negotiate, and we I think that in the beginning of January a new amendment was issued to an act on management of European funds, and this amendment just pointed out the ministry in which I'm working and as a national institution responsible for the drafting process and negotiating. So in this, however, with regard to the rural policy and development of rural areas, Ministry of Agriculture in Poland is also very active, and our Ministry of Agriculture has already started in June last year, setting special regional bodies, consulting bodies in our regions to collect again needs and ideas. But when we look at the material which was gathered, there are many overlaps with the cohesion policy. So now we are thinking what to do, how to address all these needs, like I don't know, the communication, transportation, roads, and water supply, water treatment, climate change. And so these are topics which would be common for agricultural policy and cohesion policy, and one of the big issues is how to go about them. Thanks.
Yes, it's good to hear that you are, let's say, as a ministry in touch with the stakeholders, and that you are talking to the other ministries, not like what we hear from Croatia, for example. I can confirm that in Germany it's also taking place this way. I think it's just that the federal level, who never had to do anything concretely with the cohesion fund programs, and now has to think about, and they have not been fans of the recovery and resilience plans like other countries. Also to think about the let's say the structure, the internal structure of managing the funds is very straightforward in Poland, because it is a centralized country anyway, or I mean the European funds were quite centralized, and it's a little bit more difficult in other countries. Yes, who else would like to say something here, or comment? Maybe also still on the let's say on this idea that Serafin had not to focus, let's say, anymore on the 10%, if it is for non-agricultural EFRD, or if it is for, let's say, the whole yes, everything in the EFRD, and to focus actually on local, on, let's say, earmarking for local development. Personally, I have a little bit of a problem with that, because I think local in urban context and in rural context where it is leader, it's not the same thing. Ursula, if no one else, there are some things in the chat. I will take a look at that, but please start.
Yeah, no, I'm sort of following the chat as well, but I just wanted to bring up this last question, because we have a very, very clear set of proposals concerning the local aspect. One is the Serafin's idea of minimum 10% for territorial tools, whether it's urban or rural and so on. The other one is the one that Franco mentioned. I think a lot of other people are also talking about this mandatory territorial chapter in the NRPPs, which is, well, one does not exclude the other, I think, but there are two different ways of safeguarding the territorial, let's say, territorial interests are not forgotten. But how do we, in practice, go about forming alliances, finding people that would help us, organizations that would help us make this happen? Because then it would, as also Lydia said, there has been a very, very strong mobilization of stakeholders that brought up this 10% for rural, as the Commission has finally accepted the minimum threshold, some kind of minimum threshold for rural. Who do we mobilize to make this territorial, to put this territorial question on the table in a strong way.
Does someone, yes, I don't know if Martijn wants to react directly on that, but if it's linked, it's okay, as long as the discussion continues.
Indeed, it's on this point. Do you hear me well with my
Yes.
headphones? Yeah, okay, great.
Please quickly say where you're from and where you're
Yes,
actually
indeed. I
working
will
on.
introduce myself very briefly. I'm not representing anyone but myself, so to say. I'm an expert, but already quite long working in this field. I was actually at the European Commission when all the territorial tools were introduced in 2013. And since then, I've been working on this. Also was involved in the ex post evaluation of the 14-20 period, especially on how these territorial tools and sustainable urban development has worked. And now I was also part of the Urdico research. So from a research point of view and working with mainly cities, actually, I'm quite aware of all this. So that was also a bit my question I posed before, because it's tentative to talk about percentages, 10 for me, 10 for you, and or 8. But I think really the bigger question is, of course, are local and regional governments still a real player in the whole story? That's what we already discussed. And what we, I think, discussed a little bit less is about the territorial approach. Where we think that is a particular way of working, place-based, trying to do it in an integrated way, trying to have tools which are also really supporting bottom-up development, like CLLD, but also ITI, whether this way of working sort of is still there. And I think for the moment, it's very optional. I think in the last programming period, there was finally sort of a very strong narrative, a strong logic, how it could be included in all these different funds. And now we are not talking about that anymore, basically, which I think is, of course, is a pity, because all the research that we do shows that it's actually working quite well and very important for capacity building and strong local development. So one point is, I think, honestly, that the research that we did is a bit buried, especially also the exposed one. And going to your alliances, I think if you are attacked from all sides and the enemy is stronger, which I think is certainly the case now, you have to unite forces. So again, I'm speaking for myself, but I know that also cities are very worried, as even explained. Other regionals and local authorities are very worried. So I think the only thing to have an influence is to join these forces between the rural and urban interests, and also regional interests, and try to bring a common message that this local approach is important. How to do that, I don't know exactly, but of course there are a lot of stakeholders. I don't know, for example, if the rural people, I'm sorry, I don't know your names, official names as well, but do you speak to Eurocities, for example? Are there also these combinations of associations which represent different interests that try in one way to bring a common message? And of course, you also have the Committee of the Regions, you have the European Parliament. So I think potentially there are strong partners, and so it should be doable, but probably only if there is one common message. So, but that's the easy thing to say as an expert. So I leave it to you again. Thanks.
Thank you, Martijn. I think that's exactly what Serafin was also proposing to us, maybe not so explicitly, that we have to use the next few months, let's say, to frame our the positions, let's say, and if possible, together with, let's say, all those that are interested in a local development support. So probably it's really like the first time for me in the history, because there has always been leader, and then we looked at the CLLD as an experiment, and in many cases it didn't really work out, and so on. But local development has been supported by cohesion policy. It has been, and so even if not everywhere, so we should unite forces, of course, and try to talk to our, let's say, MEPs, to the representatives in the Committee of the Regions, still in the Economic and Social Committee. So there are so many ways of doing it, but I know that many organizations are already doing it. But if you haven't done it, it's, let's say, not too late, I would say. There was another hand risen. It's still here. Ade Kazimets. I suppose he's from Estonia, if I can. Yes. Could you please introduce yourself at the beginning? Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank the speakers of this seminar and previous seminar. It is very good training for me to understand a bit more what's going on around the Brussels. I'm working in Estonian Ministry of Regional Affairs and Agriculture, and my academic background is related to the rural sociology and the sociology of lawmaking. And in Estonia, also the general description of processes are similar to Poland, but of course Estonia is a small country, have many times less hierarchies and more direct interaction and horizontal interaction also between local authorities and ministries. And I would like to emphasize that I believe, also being a bit scientist, that this data-based approach to show based on the data how different structural fonts are creating inequality in regional terms and social terms is important. And now we have ongoing Interreg project on rural proofing, COP4 Rural Gov, with Spain, Ireland, Bulgaria, and Estonia. And last week we were in Finland to study also how Finland is using space-based data, very diversified data for policy design. So that this one of the idea of this a bit idealistic idea maybe of this rural proofing project is also how to empower local authorities and local communities and to press the national level ministries. And in this sense, this good EU level movements and local pressure would be joined in some points. And of course, in Estonia also, now the central government is redesigning the strategic planning and this so-called mission-based new approach. But in Estonia, as in other eastern side of EU countries, border countries near Russia, the main emphasis will be security, and all these food security, regional inequality issues are in some extent related to the security issues, and the money will go to the security. And of course, it is regional community is also very important in this context, but it is a big change. And Ursula emphasized this maybe concerns that if the central government has more power to restructure the funds, then we don't know now how our data on regional inequality, for example, are working in these narratives and in this interaction. But in brief, I would like to put more emphasis on this knowledge or data-based policy design and also interaction from local side, and how to empower the local authorities and local communities, including leader networks, to show based on data the real situation and also maybe some critical views how to use the finances of next period.
Yes, thank you very much. Some colleagues are clapping hands. And thank you for giving us this insights on Estonia and on the discussions. And yes, and I think it's also a good example because we forget to talk about it a little bit about the issue of the security, let's say, especially in your countries, you're very much focused on that. We as local actors in let's say more Central Europe or Western Europe, we don't have the specific focus. We always, let's say, hear about it, but it's a bit different for us. Yes, rural proofing. There's a comment from Lydia on rural proofing. She's saying, because she's a member of the Economic and Social Committee, as I understood, and they are preparing an own initiative opinion on rural proofing, and she hopes that it will be accepted if it, let's say, still comes in time. That's the question. Yes, I mean, we still have a few minutes. Maybe we should use it to wrap up if there's no one else who wants to talk about it. Maybe there's some last comments from Ursula and from Serafin, and maybe on Serafin on your expectations, let's say, in the next months, and if it would make sense for us in a couple of months, let's say, to have a new discussion round because there are a new webinar. Yeah, this is maybe what we could talk about now. Maybe Ursula first or Serafin, I don't know.
No, I don't really have any other point except that I will subscribe with all my hands and feet to the long list of stakeholders that we should ally with, that you should work together with. And I think we and as LDnet, which we have this value added that we actually bring together the rural and the urban territorial approaches, that we are actually extremely well positioned to try and mobilize the different types of stakeholders. But of course, we wouldn't be able to do it without people, experts and researchers such as Serafin or Joanna, or people who are from managing authorities like Ara and Alexandra and so on. So we need big mobilization. That's the only thing for me.
And we will, as LDnet, and we have a specific cohesion policy group, we will follow up all the developments, let's say, and we will communicate any, let's say, interesting also developments or discussions, and maybe also propose another webinar when it gets, let's say, more interesting again, let's say. Serafin, do you have any
No, I mean,
comments?
my only advice for people who is engaged and can engage is to use the next couple of months to make any representation, formal or informal. There's many ways of making that. For anybody, I mean, doing things collectively is good, but also don't get weight, if there's an opportunity to make a representation to do so. And there's a lot of expertise around this virtual table, so to speak. To focus on very specific things, because in any case, this is part of a big, it's not the first time that I put things and they just make a life of their own. So, don't make it perfect the enemy of the good. If there is some particular thing that we discussed quite a few here, for instance, regional chapter or territorial chapter mentioned, any idea, make it so if you have the chance during for instance, the rapporteurs and the rapporteurs, political groups, for instance, that is better than not having ideas, and they are looking for ideas as well. So, focus and the next couple of months, and maybe we can take stock in a couple of months where we are and how the debate has moved, and definitely we move by then. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And thank you, Serafin, for being with us for all these different webinars, and also for Ursula to prepare this, let's say, and together with Serafin and as a moderator, it's a big pleasure to work with you. And in that, now I would then hand over to Peter again, let's say, for the final words from LDnet.
Thank you very much, Pedro. And in fact, before I forget, can I just formally thank both the contributors, particularly Serafin and Ursula, but also the back office people who help us put together these webinars. So Harris, who always does a great job at circulating the publicity and the information about the webinars and pressing us to do that. Nestle, who has been putting together the technical side of things. And I think those are the two main, and of course Pedro, who has been moderating. So thank you all. And if I look back to the last webinar, we introduced the fabulous word of the year of smorgasbord, of the way that the new national regional plans would be a bit like they'd have a bit of everything in them, but you never know quite what you're going to eat. I think the word for this webinar, to summarize it, would be mobilization. And I was very struck by Martijn, who's obviously been reading Clausewitz and says, if you're attacked from all sides, you have to unite forces, and mention specifically rural plus urban plus regional. And I think this dialogue that we need to establish between the big players on the urban side, such as Eurocities, which was mentioned, and the other players who are important, and I won't go through the full list, but I have a special place in my heart for mountain areas, so Euromontana can have a shout out here, but all the other groupings. And as Ursula says, we have a perhaps unusual position in trying to bridge the different types of territory across the EU. There were a couple of other points I just wanted to, which people had said much more eloquently than I could. Lydia said, Europe needs simplification, but not at the expense of solidarity and territorial cohesion. And I think that that was in the chat. It's a very succinct phrase. When we look at what we've all been doing for 20, 30, sometimes even longer years, the key aspect of that local development has been evolving, has been around governance and bringing governance down to the level of communities. And the risk always of centralization, and let's be absolutely clear, this is a centralization, but at the national level, the risk always is that communities are squeezed out because other national priorities will be stronger. The desire for the false belief, and I think Joanna raises this, should we be focusing on productivity or shouldn't we be focusing on resilience, given how productivity doesn't actually deliver much in terms of challenging inequalities and bridging the gaps. But in any case, what we're facing is the risk of our innovative governance mechanisms that have developed over the last, certainly since LEADER began in 30 odd years ago, being lost in the rinse and repeat of simplification. So I would emphasize the need for mobilization, and to actually do this now, we can't simply talk about mobilization. We need to really start these or continue these dialogues and get into action. So let's take that note from Martijn's new reading of Clausewitz to bring together the rural and the urban, and let's see how we can do that. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you as an audience for contributing so much and for continuing to support these webinars. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye-bye.